Welcome to C-Suite Scale, where executive minds unpack the real stories behind business growth. I'm joined by Ed Gaudet, who is the CEO and founder of Censinet. Welcome.
Hi, Brenda.
Hello. So happy to have you on the show today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about you and what you do over at Censinet.
Sure. I'm the CEO and founder of Censinet. Started the company back in 2017 to solve the problem around third-party risk management, specifically helping providers, healthcare providers, so all we do is healthcare, help them manage their third-party vendors and products and the risk associated, typically cyber risk or cybersecurity risk, associated with those products and or organizations. And we do that. We started off doing that, and we've expanded the platform to cover enterprise risks. So, risks associated with products or processes that are internal to a health system or hospital.
Okay, wow, that's very niche. How did you kind of make your way to working in this kind of a segment?
Yeah. So, I've done software all my career, and I typically look for problems to solve through technology. I had was working for a software company previous to Censinet, and we were providing identity and access management and single sign-on tools and communication tools to healthcare providers. And I love healthcare. I love the shared mission that you have with your customers, and so many great things about working in healthcare. But as part of that process, if we were working with a prospect to become a customer, we had to marshal a security risk assessment through the process. So, what that meant was the prospect, the hospital health system, would send us an Excel spreadsheet full of questions about our security posture at the organizational level and at the product level. And unfortunately, if you saw one, you saw one. They were all different. So you could never get leverage. You could never really create a way to automate the process by throwing, electronic libraries at it, a knowledge base at it, or one or more people. It was just really hard to manage the volume of requests we were getting from that marketplace. So I thought there was a better way, and I started to work with third-party hospitals, providers that also were having difficulty with the process from their perspective. So as a hospital, they had to manage all those requests and do it in a way where it would enable them to not only identify risk but mitigate them in a consistent way to remove risk out of the equation.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love the journey there. It sounds like it just really all worked out. The domino pieces fell perfectly for you to kind of land here, especially when you were getting feedback that this was definitely a big concern for others as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, and I think we've all learned since then that an organization runs on third party vendors and products, right? So today, if you look at a hospital or quite frankly, any company, we're so reliant on technology. We're so reliant on software and hardware devices and other things to do our job, right? So every business process today, certainly within the context of healthcare, is supported by some type of third-party technology, product, or service.
So what's the biggest risk when it's not done correctly, and how you can kind of basically help save the day or mitigate that risk?
That's a great question. So for years, it was the data. It was about the patient data, and that's still a problem today. There are regulations to support patient data. So as patients, our data is protected by a regulation called HIPAA, and that was written, decades ago, and it's all around making sure that the right people can get access to the data, but no one else can get access to it. That doesn't have the right to get access to it or the authority to have access to it. So, and also you want to make sure the integrity of the data is such that it's not changing maybe a diagnosis or a treatment for the patient. But for the most part, for many years, it was about the theft of that data. And that data has a price on the open market. So just like your financial data has a price, right? Healthcare records have a price as well. If we kind of fast forward in 2009, there was a lot of incentives put forth by the Obama administration to move the industry off of paper and onto electronic systems. And when that happened, that exponentially increased the risk of data theft.
Mhm.
And so the first version of the risk, if you will, was around data. We quickly realized in 2016, 2017, that patients' lives were at stake.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so that sounds bad, right? Everyone
Yeah.
everyone knows a patient or has a family member that's been a patient, and if your mother, father, sister, brother is hooked up to a medical device
Hmm.
and it gets hacked, that could be catastrophic to the person that is actually being saved, their lives being saved,
Yeah.
or being monitored based on that device.
Hmm.
We also start to see things like ransomware creep in to the parlance, to the language, right? We all know what ransomware is today, but at the time we weren't really sure what was happening. People were coming in, taking data, encrypting it so we couldn't get access to it, and then holding it for ransom unless we paid to get access back to the data. And so what that would do is that would affect uptime. That would affect the ability, the continuity of us running the hospital because we couldn't get at the data, right?
Hmm.
And if that happens, hospitals shut down. And if hospitals shut down and you're in an ambulance having a heart attack, heading to the hospital, and it's having a ransomware attack, they have to divert you. And we were starting to see the numbers of mortality rates
Wow.
and diversions and impact to labs and other types of procedures impacted by ransomware.
That is frightening. I am so glad that you are, being proactive in this market to even see something like this and see that there's a way to kind of prevent these things from happening.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a big problem, and it's still happening. It's every year seems to get worse and worse. The industries come together to build out best practices, and tools to help providers and their technology teams deal with the onslaught of these attacks over time.
So, are there other, companies also doing what you're doing? I mean, if it's getting worse year over year, there's probably, I would hope, more companies like that are trying to do what you're doing. Are you kind of maybe paving the way for like a new model here, or kind of talk to me about that?
Yeah, we brought the innovation that we brought, the differentiation is the way we do what we do, which is really it's a community led, community curated approach to solving the problem. So one approach is to basically do it on your own, but that means every hospital, every health system has got to take technology, deploy it, customize it in support of their process, and hopefully their process is good so that it makes the technology, the process, and the people 1 + 1 + 1 equal 10, right? You want to get leverage out of that equation. But oftentimes, if it's a process is bad, and the tool is good, you're still going to get bad outcomes, and vice versa. If you have a great process, a bad tool, you're going to get bad outcomes. So what we do is we leverage the wisdom of the community by building out a network and getting leverage to the technology of the people that are participating in the network, whether they're providers, hospitals, health systems. As they join, they get to leverage everything else that the previous hospital did.
Hmm.
And if you're a third party provider, you also get to leverage everything that previous vendors and products did in terms of assessing risk from an automation perspective, because we're constantly working both sides of the network, improving both sides in the process, and the fidelity of data and insight that you get through the platform.
Okay, wow. Well, I definitely like that you are, first off, just being so proactive here, but then also, leveraging everything that you've learned previously to kind of continue to build off of that model.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
So, like, talk to me a little bit about maybe your approach on how you've scaled this company. And you talked already a little bit about that, but is that the only path that you've been going down, or are there others?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I just got off the phone. I was kind of explaining this to an investor that was interested in what we've been building, and so not only do I innovate on the product side, but I also innovate in terms of the organizational structure, how we do things, how we build product, how we go to market with product, how we service product. And case in point, it's pretty complicated, but I'll try to simplify it. Most organizations take a playbook structure that they've used in the past. You have a product team, you have a design team, you have QA, you have administrative functions, you have your board, you have your sales organization, marketing, right? This all makes sense, right? Services, support. We fundamentally took that approach and kind of started fresh. Blank sheet of paper. What functions do we need? Where have there been points of friction in the past? And how do we innovate to ensure that from a product perspective through to our customers, we reduce the noise in the signal? Customers give you signal. They give you signal in terms of what they want, even though people will say, customers don't know what they want. I always cringe because they know what they want. You just don't know what questions to ask, and you're not listening to what they're telling you, right?
Right.
So they know what they want, but oftentimes it gets diluted because of all the points of friction you have in the organization. Maybe they tell the services team, or maybe they tell the support team. By the time it gets to the product team, you remember that telephone game we played when we were kids, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different message, or maybe it never even gets to the product team. So reducing the noise in the signal from customer to product is first and foremost. So we do things very differently. What that enables us to do is to build on the initial premise, the initial innovation that we brought to market. We took third-party risk, and then we said, what other risks do you have in your organization? And most customers would say, oh, we've got a dozen, 15, 20 silos of risk that we manage. Some of them are in my organization, some of them are outside of my organization, but we get pulled into. Great. So we walk through, tell me about them. What do they look like? Map out that process. We look at it. Oh, well, we can automate that process in our current platform. We may have to change a few things around, but then you start taking those silos of risk and you start consolidating them on the platform. Now what you do is you bring in additional vectors of data that you wouldn't have otherwise had, or may have been in a different group. And so the more insight in risk that you have, I always say the enemy of risk is transparency. If you have a transparent system, then you can identify easily the risk and you can remediate those risks, right?
Okay.
And so part of the problem is identification of those risks. Where are they? Where are we most vulnerable? Which risks have the most impact on the system? Because not all risks are created equal, so we shouldn't be spending all of our resources accordingly against every risk. We should look at those risks, tier them accordingly based on priority, criticality, the potential impact they have to our business. If a risk can shut a business down, that's a pretty critical risk. We want to fix that.
Yeah.
If a risk is isolated to a small group of users, it's not on the network, we don't worry about it, we can manage the risk differently.
Absolutely. Well, and you touched on something very important, with any type of, a sales process is making sure you're understanding, the true setup within your prospect or client, and then also making sure that you're educating them as kind of like a second level after you understand how their business is structured and set up.
That's right. Yeah. And that education process, is an interesting one because in some ways, you're learning as well as you innovate at the same time, and your customers need to also understand how to apply the technology that you just brought to market, right? And so that's why you have these notion of early adopters. As you start a company, you want to really find those early adopters, those people that have the profile of adopting a technology that may be a little early for most people, maybe too early for the mainstream market, but as an early adopter, I want advantage, so I'm going to take the risk of adopting earlier. I don't want to wait until everybody else adopts it. At that point, the benefits already, I've already lost the benefit. So those early adopters are really important because they can help shape your product and help shape your vision over time. And also they're getting educated, to your point, on how to change their processes, how to innovate internally on things that may be challenging them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a lot of, good collaboration between that early adopter and you, so you can make sure that the product is as customized as possible to meet their needs. Is that fair to say?
It is. And in our case, the relationship between customization And purpose built is an interesting one. So we take a purpose built approach to products where we are trying to automate the process, the workflows, the data sets, the way that a user will interact in our system with a community led, community based, and curated set of workflows that are already out of the box. And so for that, you trade off maybe a process that was internal to your organization, but maybe holding you back, maybe inefficient. You just don't know it because you haven't seen other processes, right? So the other approach is to say, we're going to give you a blank canvas and you customize it. And again, that has benefits, but the challenge with that is it can take you 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
After you've customized, you could realize, wow, our process was not right. And we got to start all over again. So think about Salesforce.com. Think about early Siebel systems, early instances of CRM systems that were out there, Salesforce automation systems that were out there. I mean, myself personally, I've been through probably 3, 4, 5 failed CRM projects because it's new technology. You're taking a manual approach process, and you're now trying to shoehorn it into a tool that has its own set of processes and capabilities. And if there's an impedance mismatch between the two, you get bad results. So, what's important in any type of technology adoption is to really understand the risks of going fully customizable and the time it's going to take you to do that, and the risk of you failing the first time around versus leveraging the purpose-built solutions that are available in your marketplace.
Yeah. I love the way that you framed that. It sounds like also, you really have to adopt a mentality and a culture of being able to pivot and adaptability within your organization.
Yeah, there's a pivot from a customer perspective, and there's a pivot from a startup perspective too, right? So, as an entrepreneur, we live in the world of pivots, right? Because we're always looking at trying to solve a problem with a big enough problem, but also a big enough market opportunity as well, right? You could solve an interesting problem, but you could have a very small market opportunity. And obviously that might be great for that one particular problem, but you're not going to grow a true business on it, right? So you've got to figure out, does your opportunity align with a problem that's big enough?
Yeah.
And if it's big enough, then you got to look for ways to capitalize it. That's where people go out and raise money with investors, or they bootstrap it with their own capital. So it's important to make sure that timing of opportunity, the size of opportunity, and market adoption are all aligned. Because if you're too early, then you spend money trying to solve maybe a big problem, but the market's not ready yet.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah. Wow. Kudos to you. That sounds like a lot.
It's a
More
lot.
than I would be able to take on. But your several years of experience, I'm sure, kind of like led you to be able to be prepared to handle and kind of pivot around all these
Are you
nuances.
saying I'm old, Brenda?
No, I am not. I did not say
I'm
that.
old. I'm old,
Saying,
Brenda.
I'm saying you have a lot of great experience. That's all right. We're having fun here today.
We are, yeah.
Well, as far as like, you're focused on hospitals. So how do you go about, finding new hospitals to go ahead and implement your services into?
Yeah, that's a conversation for we spend hours on that. But ideally, you look at traditional marketing approaches. You can go to events where those buyers are. You can write articles or make announcements in the press or on LinkedIn that a potential buyer could see and say, "Oh, I'm interested in that. I have that problem. Let me go talk to that organization." But our best source of the next customer, if you will, comes from our existing customers.
Sure.
Those references, those are the best. Those are the best customers, because, like, when a customer will refer us to another potential customer and they become a customer, I know that when we're successful with them, they're going to refer us to the next set of customers as well. So that's what I look to do. Now, obviously, you still have to look at other forms of marketing programs and promotions and events and other things, but including things like SEO and organic search and paid search. And I mean, the good thing is there's so many different ways to find new customers. The
Yeah.
problem is there's so many different ways to find new customers.
Right.
And so, I mean, not only, picking the right ones on our end, but also you imagine the customers, all the stuff they have to deal with, all the noise they have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of choices out there from a customer perspective, but to your point, I mean, this is very, very niche, and if it's something that the hospitals are not at least looking to, they're putting themselves at a lot of risk and their patients at a lot of risk.
That's right. Every hospital, every provider, anyone affiliated with healthcare in any way, whether they're a physician practice, a dental practice, doesn't really matter. If you're dealing with patient data or you're servicing patients in any way, in any capacity that's life threatening,
Yeah.
you have to assess risk. And you have to do it in a way that's not one and done. It can't just be a point in time. It's got to be across the life cycle of the relationship that you have with that particular asset, whether it's a product or some other good or service or a relationship with a vendor or a consultant. People are risky too, right? You hire consultants or maybe you move things offshore that don't have the same regulations as we do. So they're not going to have the same protections on data that we would have here in the US, right? All these things have to be considered when you look at the risk landscape as it relates to patient safety.
Yeah, 1,000%. Which you're obviously very heavily invested in that, and you see, definitely care a lot, which is always a good thing to have that passion.
We do care we do care a lot. We do. We also, it's interesting. I don't often talk about this, but you brought up that care word and it kind of triggered this. For me, that shared mission that I mentioned earlier, where your customer, a you understand what your customer is going through, and you understand the customer of your customer because that's your friend, your family, yourself, right?
There you go.
And I found that once I got into healthcare, I could tell my parents what I did, and they understood it because they've been they're customers of health systems, and so that shared mission also means that we want to sit on the same side of the table of providers, and we want to give back as much as we can because they give back, right? And so we also spend our time helping different working groups and task groups in the industry develop documentation and best practices for how to deal with supply chain risk, or how to deal with contract language for medical device manufacturers, or how to deal with critical functions like labs and blood and radiology and things of that nature. And so really developing these recognized best practices that can be used and can be applied to, again, continue to improve security, take the risk out of healthcare for patients and for providers.
I love that. Thank you. Well, with the major AI boom that's going on right now, elephant
Hmm.
in the room,
Yeah,
how
we
are
went 23 minutes without saying AI.
I know, it's wild. It's wild. We definitely have to talk about that. How are you going about, educating your customers and then also even kind of navigating through, implementing into your own business?
Yeah. So, AI has been around for a long time. I mean, I did Bayesian learning networks back in 1997, but the application of AI in a way that's consumable is new. Gen AI, generative AI, last couple of years came out with ChatGPT. Everyone saw that. Maybe you got to Dolly sooner and you could see how you could create images with it. I mean, it fundamentally for me, when I saw that, I was like, game changer, bigger than the internet. This is going to change everything. So we immediately jumped on it from our business perspective and said, okay, what do we need to do in the context of what we're doing today to help our customers? So the first thing we did was, well, if we add AI to our product suite, we have to do it securely by design and secure by default. We can't force it on. We can't be like, hey, here's this new widget that's got AI, buy it, right? There's a lot of people out there doing that today. But in healthcare, most healthcare organizations are not going to adopt it that easily. They might do it in a sandbox. It's too risky. There's too many unknowns, right?
Sure.
They're creating AI governance committees right now to deal with the influx of new patient-centered technologies, patient care technologies that are based on AI. And so we know that the lens of risk is going to be first and foremost, governing the adoption of those technologies. So, okay, so we can't approach it that way. We can't bolt it on because people won't get full value out of a bolt on. So we had to build it from foundation up. And so we built a foundation of AI within our architectural layer of the product that basically is self-contained, it's proprietary. We partnered with AWS, Amazon, to make sure that we could do everything we need to do without sharing data publicly. And so we did that first and foremost. So that's the first thing we did. The second thing we did was we said, we're not going to turn it on by default. We're going to let customers opt in based on demand. So we have an on-demand approach to taking advantage of these new features that we offer that are AI enabled, AI capable. And then lastly, we talk about risk. We also added capabilities in the platform to help our customers assess risk of third parties, whether they be brand new AI or they've done an upgrade to an existing application and now it has AI features, it's AI capable, right? All of those changes affect risk. And so again, we want to be able to identify that so we know that there's risk and then ultimately take some type of action to remediate or mitigate that risk to a control or some type of other event that we're going to manage internally within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've really taken a mindful approach to that, and given the customer, like you said, the choice to optimize the efficiency while still capitalizing on the security aspect of it.
That's right. You want to get the benefits, the best benefits of AI, but do it in a secure, controlled way, so you're not increasing your risk. You're not introducing more risks into the process. Exactly.
What excites you about the rest of 2025 and then going on into the next year?
Yeah. New customers, existing customers that decide to stay with us, the new products that we have coming out. We're constantly releasing new capabilities into the network, which all customers can take advantage of. And the feedback from customers has been terrific. We have some new things coming out over the next couple of weeks and months, if you will, that we've been sharing with our current customers, and they're really excited about it. So as I look out, the rest of the year, I'm really excited about the adoption of the new options and capabilities we have within the product set, and the benefits that the customers will get from those new capabilities, and really think about it as we're going to make we're going to enable organizations to do risk much more, to manage risk much more economically. Mm-hmm. So it's about how do we continually squeeze out the inefficiencies in that overall process? How do we get better visibility into the risks? And how can we leverage that data into really meaningful insights and take meaningful action that we may not have thought about previously, correlating different events across the data set that we couldn't do prior to AI, for example, coming into the picture, right? And then most importantly, providing a new way for the cyber teams to communicate risk at the business level. And so the challenges many risk and cybersecurity teams have is taking the data and the information they have and packaging it up in a way that is translatable to the business owners. So the business owners typically, they deal with risk all the time. They deal with operational risk, reputational risk, environmental risk, right? Employee risk. And so how do you take cyber risk, which is largely a technical, complicated concept and topic, mm-hmm. and deliver it in a way that the business understands? And so that's what I'm looking forward to seeing the impact we're going to have on customers over the next 6 months with that.
Yeah, well, I look forward to watching the impacts that you're going to continue to have. So best of luck to you. Where can people reach out if they want to learn more or connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with www.censinet.com, which is our website. You can go to my LinkedIn page. We have newsletters. I write for Forbes. There's Forbes articles out there. We also belong to a number of associations, the Health Sector Coordinating Council, of course, the HISAC, and pretty much anywhere you can find information about healthcare technology. Most likely you'll find Censinet.
Awesome. So exciting. Well, thanks so much for everything you shared today and being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure, Brenda.
Take care.
Bye.